It felt good.
YouTube channel that I have largely focuses on running. Have you ever run? Have you ever run a race?
Very amateur way because I live near a bike path on the lake, and it's also a running path. I wouldn't say run, I would say jog. I used to do that, but mostly I used to go to the Y on the swimmer, or I was until COVID came along.
Right. And when I saw you, it was the summer of 2018. It was, I think, 10 days. It was like 10 days after you had turned 100. And I remember that day because I took the bus to the Chicago Art Institute of Chicago, to meet you there to see the Charles White exhibit. And I was stunned. I mean, I've got to be honest, I was stunned that you were just sitting on the steps. I wasn't expecting that. You blended in with everybody of all different ages. And then we went and we just walked through the exhibit. And you told me that you had just come from the YMCA from a Pilates class. And so tell me a little bit about that. I know you said that, COVID has affected, had affected your routine and it's changed. But tell me what you were doing then and what you're doing now.
Well, I know that if I quit doing something, I may never be able to pick it up and do it again. And so sometimes I don't feel like it, but I do it anyway. And I'm talking about exercise. And I do feel better afterward. I live on the 23rd floor, and I walk up the stairs, and now that I'm not going to the YMCA, I walk up 23 flights up, about 5 or 6 times a week. And sometimes not lately, but sometimes I used to maybe sit on the steps and rest about the 15th floor. So it's very rare that I don't do some exercise. So I think the constancy helps.
I met Bea Lumpkin 24 and a half years ago when I began interviewing her and her late husband, the celebrated steelworker and labor activist Frank Lumpkin, for a story about the publication of Bea's book, Always Bring a Crowd. The book details Frank's 17-year fight to win back the wages and pensions of some 3,000 former Wisconsin steelworkers who were shorted of both, a fight that Bea also participated in. During several sit-down interviews with the Lumpkins in their Chicago bungalow in early 2000, I learned about their labor activism and challenges as an interracial couple who married in 1949. In addition, I learned about Frank's history. He had come from a family of sharecroppers and had been a boxer at one point in his life. And I learned about Bea's life history and work as a teacher and volunteer union organizer. Bea's passion for helping workers came honestly. Her parents, Russian immigrants, raised her and her siblings in grinding poverty in the Bronx. Her mom worked at the infamous Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, where a raging fire resulted in the deaths of 146 workers. Locked doors prevented many from escaping. Bea's mom was fortunate to not be at work the day of the fire, but she would die young regardless, in 1937 at age 49, years after receiving a cancer diagnosis. Even though more than 60 years had passed since Bea's mom's death, I remember how Bea, 81 years old when I first interviewed her, cried at the mention of her mom's passing. Some years after the publication of my article about Bea and Frank, the couple offered to take me to dinner, and I accepted, and we became friends. Frank, considered a Chicago institution for the victory he helped secure for the steel workers and his other battles on behalf of laborers, died at age 93 on March 1st, 2010. By that point, I was no longer living in Chicago, but on many visits back to the city, starting with Bea's 100th birthday on August 3rd, 2018, I have made a point to visit her. I reflect on how I felt when I saw her that day at the Art Institute on August 13th, 2018, sitting on the steps outside and standing up without hesitation, or it seemed, much effort after she spotted me. We are conditioned to think of old people in a certain way, as slow, feeble, and needing help with everything. It's a stereotype, an image that I had assumed, without even realizing it, that Bea would fulfill. But that hot summer day, she blew my mind with a different way to think about age and aging. And while I recognize that aging and decline go hand in hand, Bea showed me it doesn't mean you have to let age beat you down. No, in fact, you can be an equal opponent by engaging in healthy practices. Bea came into this world in the midst of the Spanish flu pandemic and lived to tell the tale of the COVID pandemic. And she made worldwide news while at it, wearing a homemade hazmat suit as she placed her absentee ballot in a mailbox for the November 2020 election. She told the world that she'd voted in every presidential election since 1940, and she wasn't going to stop. Papers the world over shared her quote. "It's always important to vote, but this election," she said, "it's the most important one of my life. Democracy is on the line." Just like Bea wouldn't let a pandemic stop her, she doesn't let age, or it seems anything else, stop her from doing anything. In fact, to this day, she is still very much involved in bringing people across generations together to fight injustices. And so, when I considered training to run a marathon as a woman of a certain age, Bea's stereotype-breaking practices were one of my inspirations to dust myself off, put on my running shoes, and see what I could do. What I did was run the 2023 Chicago Marathon and time qualify to earn a guaranteed spot to run it again this year. Bea, by her own admission, has never run a formal race, but she's one of those people I consider a marathon master because she's mastered the toughest race in the world, the marathon of life. When I started this channel a little over 6 months ago, I said I'd profile such marathon masters. Bea is the first subject. And I'm sure that a lot of people would love to know what you do to, just keep going.
Being involved in human affairs and not becoming isolated has probably been the most important factor. And then I would say exercise has helped me survive my arthritis, which I have felt, I won't say suffered from, because again, the exercise helps me stay on top of the arthritis. And I started to do the push-ups. I used to end every class at the YMCA by doing push-ups to keep up my strength, and I found I've been able to pick that up again.
You did push-ups when I visited you. Was it summer of 2022? And I have you on film. I have that footage, and it was very like, I don't even do push-ups. I have to say I do that. I don't do them often, but I need to do them more. I need to look at that video again and get some tips from you about that. But we've kind of talked about your fitness routine. I mean, it sounds like what you're doing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're taking your steps, you're walking up 23 flights and walking down 23 flights 5 or 6 times a week?
Well, I don't always walk down, although if I ever had an emergency, I'd be walking down the steps, for fire. So I include that every so many days, walk down and then up. Because, as I said, because you use somewhat different muscles.
Right.
But the big problem people have as they get real, very old, is balance and preventing falls. And so I've gone to a physical therapist who gave me just 3 exercises, but you repeat them 30 times each. And I find that's a pretty good workout. Actually, the abdominal muscles are very important. And I like to do the sit to stand exercise.
So, how many times a week do you do the sit and stand? How many times a week do you do some of the...
That has to be daily.
Oh, every day.
I do have a healthy diet. That happened because I had to learn how to prepare a healthy diet when I had 4 children, right?
That's right.
You take care of your kids, and I ate what they ate.
I actually threw out some questions to a few of my friends and family and asked them if they had an opportunity to sit down with you, what they would ask you, what they're curious about. And one of the questions from one of them was about what are the 3 or 4 food items you always keep in your refrigerator?
3 or 4 items that I always keep. Well, I'm not sure if one of them is ice cream. I'll include the freezer. But no, that's not on the list because I keep it there. That's one reason it stays, because I don't eat it.
Oh, well.
Milk, lettuce, a good bread. That's already 3. I always keep eggs, but I certainly don't eat them every day. But I have a protein every day.
You said a good kind of bread. What's a good bread?
I like a hard crust.
Okay. And is that a whole milk, 1% milk, skim?
2%.
Okay. All right. And when you eat the eggs, I know you said you don't eat them all the time, but do you eat the whole egg with the yolk?
I'm, I'm afraid I eat the egg for the yolk. I should let on that I buy milk by the gallon just as though I had kids here. I probably easily drink a pint a day.
Do you drink 8 glasses of water a day? You know, some of these things they tell us drink 8 glasses of water a day, have an apple a day, you know, a certain amount of vegetables and fruit.
Well, the 8 glasses of water a day. My grandson is sitting right here, so I can't lie.
Uh,
No, and that's something uh, I try to make it 8 glasses of liquids a day.
uh, what, like coffee, tea, some water, milk?
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I could be better hydrated.
And then what about the fruit and the vegetables? Are you pretty good with those?
Oh yes, I happen to like them.
What
It's
what's your favorite fruit?
my favorite fruit. Well, I'm supposed to stay off anything acid, so the delicious citrus fruit, I'll have to say no. I guess I should say apples and good pears. Um, Mangoes are pretty good if they're ripe.
Mm-hmm.
I like my fruit ripe. But I don't think I ever met a fruit that I did not like.
To know, how do you cope with stress or sadness?
Well, that's where the exercise is very helpful. Um, and looking, for example, at the November election,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that fascism means death and destruction, I'm under a lot of stress. And the more we understand about this political crisis that our country is in, the more stress we're under. But I'd rather know than I prefer stress to blissful ignorance. So stress is not entirely bad, but what I do is exercise, really. It might be in the form I'm going out for a walk. So there you're also getting the pleasure of being outdoors.
So are you still walking 2 miles a day outside when the weather is nice?
Um, well, I used to walk just for pleasure, but now I have to have a purpose at the end of it. So, two of my favorite grocery or fruit stores are a mile away. So the 2 miles, 1 mile there, then I shop, and that's like a rest, and then 1 mile back. And sometimes I take a shortcut. just go to the store. That's a quarter mile away. Well, what helped me survive COVID is the fact that I have a thrilling view of Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. Even though I was not going out and meeting people, because of the wonderful view I have from my apartment, I never felt closed in. And I should mention this building was built by the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union for its members. As that workers cooperative, they were able to keep the rents much lower so that I and other working people can afford to live here.
Well, one of the things I know about you, or at least I think as late as last year when I saw you in person, you were still very active in the Chicago Teachers Union. Are you still very active in that? I mean, that.
Yes.
Okay, so that, it sounds like kind of getting back to, I'm thinking about the interview from 6 years ago, and one of the things that you mentioned to me at that time was that the struggle, what you call the struggle, keeps you going. And so tell me a little bit about that. Would you say that also just, it's keeping your mind engaged, it's keeping you connected to other people, it's keeping those relationships going? And how does that impact your overall mental health?
Oh, I think it's been a positive, a very positive factor. And of course, it automatically keeps me in touch with young people. I don't mean in terms of the students so much. I do miss that classroom contact. But so many of the teachers are retiring and young ones take their place. So I find the intergenerational concept very stimulating and important. Oh, and I didn't give thanks to the advances of medicine because I'm on blood clot dissolving medication, and without the help of that, I probably would have had strokes. And I've had successful replacement of a heart valve, or rather a valve in the aortic artery.
Wasn't that relatively recent that happened?
I'm the oldest person in Illinois to have that operation.
How old were you when you had the operation?
I was 103. But the surgery is marvelous. You can go home the next day. They don't have to cut you open much, maybe a quarter inch, to pull the old valve is gone, to place a brand new valve over the one that's no longer
What are your sleep habits?
That's one thing I'm very good at.
Well, it sounds like you're good at a lot of things, but
But unfortunately, I've gotten into the habit of going to bed later. Um, but I try to get 8 hours sleep.
do you typically get 8 hours sleep?
And yes,
Do you credit the luck of the draw, clean living, or anything else in particular for your longevity?
well, I've been told that one of my, I'm, I'm a first generation American citizen. So I haven't met just a bare meeting with one of my four grandparents, but the other grandfather was said to have lived to 110, and so I'm hoping I got a good gene for longevity. But and the rest is good luck. Because I didn't fall victim to a cancer. In many ways, these are very scary times. Humanity is in the unenviable position of facing more than one crisis that could wipe us all out. I mentioned nuclear weapons, so I consider war is outdated, any kind of war. Uh, but there's also the climate change that's being caused by human activity, and that could make the earth uninhabitable. Uh, and doesn't have to, the climate crisis can be addressed, but we have to work together, and one country alone cannot do it. As long as we don't blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons or let the earth dry up by our bad choices on climate. I hate to say ours because I didn't make those bad choices. You didn't make them. And they're being made just for profit now. So none of this is inevitable. So as people do not allow these climate crises to pass the tipping point, and if we don't allow the warmongers to blow us up, it's going to be common to live over 100. Very common. So I'm optimistic.